Okay, so we talk about innovation in training, e-learnings, gamification. And I know one of the speakers mentioned this yesterday as well, right? Talent development for our panelists right now. What do you think are the essential skills or important skills that we need to be able to build in the leadership team?
I'll take up that question first. Alright. Okay. What does it take to in a leader?
Yeah. So what are the essential skills that we have to be able to develop in leaders?
Yeah. So there are many skills as such. I mean, it's like a leader is somebody who changes like a chameleon. Changes the color based on the situation. So you need to be autocratic at times. You have to be democratic. So what I meant is leadership is something. The traits are not defined. However, there are a set of leadership traits which a person needs to have, dependent upon which situation his team members are, followers are. And accordingly, since we are talking with reference to learning and development, one thing is there, like if I ask a question, I mean, I'm just asking, throwing up a question to the audience is like, who decides? Who decides the needs, or who identifies the needs of a training? Who identifies in an organization? Now, yeah, one is obviously one party is the employee. I know what I need to be trained on. But am I going to be asked in an organization, especially when I am at an executive level or a first level in the organization? Am I going to be asked, or will I be just told that this is a training for you, go and attend it? So who identifies?
That's the immediate superior.
We hear superior. I also heard earlier HR or immediate superior of the employees.
Correct. So absolutely correct. Now if we are all considering ourselves as HR professionals sitting in a cabin, obviously we are responsible for basic operations of HR. But are we the right people to identify the training needs? No. So who are the right people? The right people are definitely the line managers.
Yes, exactly.
The reporting heads. So we as an HR person in an organization, do we have that kind of a rapport and an understanding with the line managers to understand what their team needs? So line managers should be given that authority and a responsibility to understand what training. I think it happens with me only. Alright, so what I was talking was, yes, the first reporting heads, the line managers, it's their responsibility to understand what their team members are lacking in and identify and communicate and have a good collaborative communication and a model, be ready to cater the requirements where all the members would require certain kind of trainings, and obviously it cannot be one for all. As I said, like it has to be a doctor-patient approach. We need to first diagnose a patient and then accordingly we need to give a medication to the patient. So it is more like, I call it as a doctor-patient approach. So one medicine cannot fit into all the patients here. So yes, identification by the first line managers is one thing which now if we talk about line managers as leaders, to answer your question, yes, one thing is, as a leader, the person must know what is required for the times. At times, I might fail to understand what is lacking in me. So who's the right person to point out, like, this is what is missing in you, or this is something you need to make your productivity or quality deliver a more or a better qualitative work. So it's obviously the leader. So diagnosing what is missing or diagnosing something which needs to be added on to the existing, here we use terms like reskilling and upskilling. So at times the leader needs to understand when an employee needs to be reskilled the employee needs to be upskilled. So that is something very important. The leader needs to understand the nerve of the employee who is going to be asked to attend a training. Then only when we identify correctly, we identify the disease correctly, then only we can give a medication appropriate. Otherwise, what happens? For a toothache, we might give a medication for a stomach ache. So obviously, identification is most very critical step in a training process.
So the leaders of our leaders should help us identify the essential skills that we need to develop. Anyone else?
I think considering the rapid tech changes and digital migration, and in general, I think a successful leader is an agile leader. And when we speak of agile leadership, it is about being humane, about being democratic and inclusive. So when it comes to digital migration, an agile leader must innovate new processes and respond to the changing times. When it comes to demographic differences, boomers are retiring and Gen Zs are coming in. A successful leader or an agile leader must implement DEI programs. And we are also living in a VUCA world, right? We are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And an agile leader needs to plan strategically, have critical thinking, spot opportunities and threats, and really create a culture of learning. Thank you.
Agile leadership.
And I would agree with you that Chrisma, there's a lot of essential skills that we need to definitely we need to possess as leaders in the organization. And for me, for the past 2 years, because of the pandemic, I believe the emerging and one of the enduring essential skills that I'm seeing would be at the top of my head. Maybe the top 3 are being agile, being flexible whenever you need to. You need to move as fast as you can. Second one would be is really being mindful. I believe that's why in our organization, one of the key courses that we're rolling out for our managers is really the mindfulness and transformational leadership, making sure that they also have time to really reflect on a lot of things, being in the moment with themselves and also with the people that work for them. And maybe the third one would evolve around these are the being data driven, being innovative, and being creative. So those are and being purpose driven. But for me, the top 3 and the top 2 are those ones.
I love the point that Dr. Ray brought up, which was enduring skills. It wasn't about essential skills, it's enduring, and I completely am agreeable in the line of this. I think with enduring leadership skills, the first thing I wanted to emphasize is when we talk about leadership, sometimes we confuse it with management. We assume that a leader is a manager and they have the responsibilities to decide what sort of directions or strategies we should be going after. But in all truth and fairness, every single one of you in the room here today, you are a leader. You are responsible and the captain of your own development, the captain of your own skills acquisition. You need to figure out also then what are the important capabilities you need to develop for yourself in order to operate in this VUCA environment that we just spoke about. To be able to navigate and be nimble and be agile and really being able to keep up with the current times of digital transformation. So my first point is, when we talk about enduring leadership skills, it is not about your management level. It is also about you as an individual. But the second point I wanted to make then, also building a little bit on agile and being in the VUCA situation, is then about crisis management. I think one of the skills that would be important in the growing times that we are in is the ability to be able to deal with that ambiguous data, make rapid decision making, be data driven in your suggestions or your thought leadership, and to be able to crisis manage through what is being thrown at you and be very nimble and quick with it. For me, that model would then be simplified into BKD. B for a letter B, but also being able to make good decisions, being able to deal with the situation that you're in and be very decisive once you know that you're going to make a decision. No is keeping an open mindset, finding an alternative approach, being willing to listen from someone on the ground who might offer you feedback on how they think would be the best way to navigate the new situation. And D is do. start doing something. Doesn't matter that it needs to be a big innovation. It can just be a really small thing. But as long as you take action, that's going to be able to move your organization, move yourself in the right direction. So be, know, do.
Be, know, do. And it's not all about essential skills nowadays. It's all about enduring skills. Thank you, Nika, for that. We all learn something. So panelists, what are some of the future of L&D that you can think right now, or when it comes to talent or people development? Like, how can we future-proof or prepare ourselves or our organization as HR professionals to be ready, like not for another pandemic, I hope, but maybe, proof ourselves for, let's say, 5 years or 10 years from now, that we are really up with the innovation and the improvements is going on. Dr. Sana? Oh, okay.
I mean, I'll be happy to share some of the things that I used to do. I was with Skills Future Agency. It's a lifelong learning agency based in Singapore for the last 8 years or so. As part of that agency, I was a part of an outfit called the Futures Office. Our job was to come up with the next horizon that we think is important for Singapore's economy, looking at what that transformation is going to look like, who are the key stakeholders, who are the startups that are being playing in the scene, who we think are going to still be the big tech boys in this area, and then figuring out one level later on what are the skills and jobs that are going to be in demand. The first thing I would say about looking at the future is actually the most critical one, which is about mindset. The mindset of the individual needs to be aware that whatever you learn today, it's important for you to retain that skill. But currency of your skill is also very important. When your organization is sending you for training, they have no intention of saying you must go for this because it is something that we need to fulfill learning hours. We need to do this in order to tick off a certain checkbox. They're actually investing in you. They're telling you you are important. If you don't upskill, if you don't reskill, our organization cannot advance. So individuals need to recognize this opportunity and observe that being invested in is something very important, and it's important to keep your skills currency. Take advantage of that opportunity and really go after what you think is important for you to be able to future-proof yourself. The second one about future-proofing also is for an individual or organizations need to constantly be looking at what are the emerging skills, what are the emerging softwares, and start asking yourself, do I need to do two things? Do I need to, number one, acquire that infrastructure? Or number two, I actually don't need to acquire the infrastructure, but my people need to know how to leverage it. So, many a times you hear organizations who have bought these huge, amazing IT infrastructures, but they never invested in the second one, which is about their people. They never train their people up to be able to do it. So there's no point because you only leverage 10% of that total investment. So the second point I'm trying to make is that when you are future-proofing yourself, as an organization, you need to figure out which is really the right diagnose. Is it the people or is it the IT infrastructure that you should be investing in? The third one then is looking at horizons. The way to look at horizons is, I think 5 years is a bit long for future-proofing. The reason behind I say 5 years is long is Industry 4.0 moves at such a rapid speed. If we talk about, the advancement of internet penetration, in the past it used to be maybe on a 5-year cycle that you get something really much fresher. But if you look at other things like social media and how it went from 0 to 1 million, it goes up in 18 months. Like TikTok, I think only 6 months. So if you know that the speed of change is this rapid, it means that the horizon that you're planning, it needs to be on a more rapid cycle. Maybe training needs analysis cannot be done once a year anymore, and it definitely cannot be done in silo without the line manager as we have established. But then maybe this cycle needs to be a lot more rapid, it needs to be dynamic, we need to find a way in which we leverage good data insights. For example, LinkedIn is a great one, where you can actually leverage some of their insights to say these are the emerging skills that I need to develop. And it's not about 1 year life cycle. It's now a lot more rapid, like maybe 9 months that we need to start reinventing what exactly our training interventions should look like.
Yes, and I think we could use the skills that Chrisma mentioned earlier in Dr. Ray, right? Being agile and flexible, right? Not 1 year TNA or TNI. So HR professionals, we have to do it more frequently. Right? Anyone else from our panelists to add on what is the future of L&D?
I believe training and development is no more about the productivity of the employees. I think it had gone a step ahead. It is more about employability skills. You know, when I talk about employability skills in the last 2 years, I think maybe you or maybe your people in your circle must have got a pink slip from the organizations. They were being asked to leave for various reasons during pandemic. Among many reasons, one of the reasons would have been that maybe you were not that relevant for them at that point of time. Maybe the scrutiny was being done because they chose somebody else above you. Could have been the reason, right? So how relevant you are for an organization. And also to keep up the pace of that employability skill, it is needed as an employee that you need to prove your relevance at workplace. You need to ensure that your employer feels that, no, I cannot run my business without this employee. And how you are going to do it? You need to upgrade yourself. How? There are multiple ways in which you can upgrade. Definitely one of them is building up your mindsets, being self-aware, what you need to be in future, how you need to develop yourself. You need to bring in a lot of changes in your habits, in the approach you work, technical skills, as we are talking about digital age, the transformation which had happened from industrial era to digital age. People here dealing with diversified age groups, diversified backgrounds, having an inclusive work environment, talking about DEI, diversification, equality and inclusion. So considering all of that, I think one of the things which we need to look forward, which we have I think skipped during the discussion, is bringing about a lot of flexibility in the policies or the culture of an organizations. Now, any organization strives through its culture. I think yesterday, again, I will give a reference here because I have been listening to the panel members very deeply, and one of the members said culture is all about influencing. So it's more about bringing in behavioral change. So when you upgrade yourself, what change you are bringing into yourself? Obviously, one thing is technical skill sets, a hardcore technical skill set. But I think since day before yesterday, we have been talking about intelligence quotient. We have been talking about mental stability, and today morning itself there was something about EAPs, failure. And I was also keen on understanding why they fail, and the speaker was able to give me that answer, because obviously it's all about mental status. So if the learning processes are able to convert that de-stressed employee into a eustress employee, wherein that stress can help an employee to perform better and prove his relevance at workplace, I think then that this is again a continuous process. I cannot say that this is going to last for 5 years or next 10 years, because this is going to evolve every year at a rapid rate. We have gone through tremendous changes. I think many of you, yesterday we had an activity of human bingo. Many of you had returned first time conference after pandemic. So that was not a big deal 2 years back. Attending a conference, a physical conference, was not a big deal. But few of you looked very excited about it. After so many months I'm attending this. So the perspective has changed. We have started giving importance to something which was not so important before, and researchers have shown that there are jobs which will not exist in times to come. And do we need to prepare ourselves for keeping ourselves relevant at workplace? The answer is yes. How? That's a big question mark that you need to evaluate yourself. Because as I say, doctor and patient, if you are treating yourself, you need to understand what is wrong with you or what is lacking in you, or how you can make yourself better. Obviously, you can seek help of experts like your line managers, your leaders, your role models, to understand what is that you need to develop. So training and development is not only about a specific thing that you are currently doing at work, but it is all about future, and it is all about being ready for future. It is all about being relevant for future skill sets. We have also spoken about critical skills yesterday. So, I mean, I had a lot of takeaways from yesterday's session. I was sitting throughout as an attentive participant, as a student. So all these are my takeaways, and definitely I'm going to take it away to my country, India. That was wonderful to understand that the complete set of skill sets have also changed. So you cannot focus on certain skill sets which are not going to exist in coming future. So start having that research where your interest lies, what you are good at, and start sharpening your skills from today onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna. And I hate to end this really wonderful conversation. But before we do that, about innovation in people and talent development, Chrisma and Dr. Ray, any other tips that you could share with
I
our
think-
participants?
Yes, ma'am. I think in addition, one way of future-proofing our L&D is to ensure that we have sustainable buy-in from the management, especially so that L&D budgets are on the rise. We are not only experiencing hyperinflation on our commodities, but also on our L&D. So we really have to show them, present them the impact of having a proactive L&D programs. And I think the future of L&D are, I think, three things. It's going to be automated. There'll be a lot of upskilling and reskilling to promote employee retention. There'll be a lot of online platforms like Coursera, and it's going to be customized according to the needs, the learning needs of our learners. And lastly, it's going to be inclusive. Like there'll be a lot of DEI programs and mental health awareness programs to ensure health and well-being of our employees. So the future is so bright. It's going to be so exciting and challenging at the same time.
Thank you for that. I believe on top of those things that you mentioned, there's actually a lot of things that I'm thinking when it comes to looking into the future. One of the key things would be, maybe I won't back onto the one that was mentioned by Dr. Sapna when it comes to looking into the productivity and cost and really look at the value. I believe those are the key things that I'm looking at into the future. Employees and organizations looking into that value, redefining it so that we can ensure that we can have that sustainable learning and development process in the organization, program in the organization. Next one would be is in terms of, so that value driven, the other one is the values driven. How can we ensure that the emotional connection is still there? How can we sustain the emotional connection of the employees to the mission of the organization through our leadership or learning and development programs? At the same time, also thinking about, because skill stacking is one of the emerging things that's happening right now, and I believe there will be like an increase of that in the nearest future. Like say for instance, HR would be able to do not just the HR stuff, but they should be able to do analytics stuff as well, and even other skills. I believe that's how we prepare for the future, being agile as well. And maybe the last one that I can say would be is in terms of the people is always at the center of all of these futures. When we reinvent or innovate or we look at the future, it's always the people, putting people at the center of it. And I delivered a specific speech on the future of leadership, and this is one of the key things that I really highlighted, that, put people at the center and you won't go wrong. So I believe that's it.
Thank you so much, panelists. So once again, we have Nico, Dr. Sapna, Chrisma, and Dr. Ray.